Hey, everybody, it's Melissa Rogozinski with the Marketing Phoenix podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again today. I am super excited because today is the first episode kicking off our 6-month series on sales-driven marketing podcast. So we're going to talk about sales process, sales workflow, deal flow optimization, and I'm absolutely tickled to have my good friend and colleague, Gil Wolchock, from Steno to be my guest for this first episode. So I want you guys to meet Gil. We'll tell you a little bit about how we met, and we'll get into some really exciting content for you. So Gil, tell everybody a little bit about your background, please.
Sure. It's great to join you. And for the first, that's pretty cool. Gil Wolchock. My title is Vice President of Outside Sales at Steno, which is a full-service core reporting agency. I've got an extensive background in legal technology, spent most of my sales leadership career first at LexisNexis, running several different pieces of software from the sales side, and then left that side of the business to come to the core reporting side, where I worked at one of the major big box competitors to Steno for several years running sales in the Northeast. I did my own stint at a startup trying to do things differently in the world of court reporting. That did not pan out. And then I got reintroduced to Steno and was really aligned with their core values, really met mine, and an opportunity to grow a business from the sales side. I've been here almost 2 years and absolutely loving it.
So I want to tell everybody a little bit about how we met. So we were both on, were we at the Atlanta airport? I think I'd flown up from here from Florida to Atlanta to catch the flight to Chicago because we're all on our way to the ABA Tech Show a couple of years ago. And something happened, it got delayed. And then there was a group of us. We didn't really know each other, but you had a group. There were 3 or 4 of you, I think, from the startup company.
Right.
And I can't remember what triggered. I think y'all just looked the part. I could tell.
I think when you're going to a legal tech show, people that are at the airport, especially Atlanta, you know who they are. Mm-hmm. So I think there was that. I think I had seen you somewhere. So there was like facial recognition.
Oh, I probably had pink hair too.
You had the pink hair for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think you also wound up sitting on the flight next to one of my sales guys. And so, and he's very personable. And I think you guys probably spoke the whole time. And I think it was a pretty turbulent flight. You might even hung on to him, I think, a little bit from what I heard.
The one up there was pretty calm, but it was
the one back. Okay.
Because we got Chicago, we all did our thing. The ABA Tech Show is always so much fun. And actually, your CEO was in the pitch competition. I remember. But then it was on the way back. There was just this. And I took a screenshot of it on my phone. I don't know that I have it, but it was a wicked storm. As much as we have both flown, I have never seen such a storm it was terrifying. And it was on the way back, and we all made it safely. I actually sat next to a woman on the flight, and she kept holding on to me, like she dug her nails into my skin. And I was like, I said, I promise you, we're going to land because I know that God has another purpose for me and I'm not done yet. So we're going to land. Everybody's going to be fine. But it was horrible. And then we got off, we landed, we got into Atlanta. We all gathered there in the same gate to just everybody make sure they're okay. And you pulled me aside and you're like, look, you've been networking with all these people, but I'm really the guy you need to be talking to. Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, I did do that. I'm like, if you want to sell something here, you're going to the wrong place. So yeah.
And it was, I was like, awesome, great. And I was humbled, but I was also excited. And it just, from there, it really just became just a friendship. It was something that was very natural. So it's been exciting to watch each other through our careers. And so anyway, so when I presented this on LinkedIn and I put out some topics there and I tagged a bunch of people, I was like, hey, I want to have some people as my guests. You ponied up, you raised your hand. You wanted to do this one was really about the Hunters article I read a few years ago. And you said, I really want to talk about the challenger sales. So I want to kind of start that way and talk about Hunters versus the challenger sale. And I think, everybody's familiar with the challenger sale book. You should have a copy. If you're in sales, you should have a copy of this on your bookshelf. And then the Hunters article, let me do a quick screen share and then we'll kind of dive into that. This is an article I wrote a few years ago. Actually, during when we were dealing with the pandemic and everybody was trying to get back to legal week. And it was really, the basis was during that year or two that we weren't able to be in person because of the pandemic. How do you generate sales? And after talking to several sales leaders, it just seemed like people had become complacent on status quo. What did they already have? Clients, they just, were kind of relying on just their name brand, but they weren't doing the hard work of actually hunting for new prospects. So hunting prowess, knowing what your unique selling point is, the needs assessment. This is really about assessing the client's needs. It's not really about your product's features and benefits. It's really about what's the need of the client, and then being able to tell the story that way. And then this is kind of key, target with marketing. So this is kind of one of those places where marketing and sales should be coming together to support the sales effort. And we're going to get into that here in a little bit with Gil. And then engaging them. What's that workflow look like when they ask for a request for proposal? And then finally sales, closing the deal. So it's really kind of a process. But so with that, let me just kind of ask you, Gil, like, as you approach this and you were thinking about the challenger sale, and then you found out about my article hunters, what are some of the things from just both of these that if you really want to be the best in sales, the best that you can be in sales, where do people need to start? Where do they need to, if they're already experienced, what do they need to be focusing on?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I think the article is terrific, and it dovetails with a lot of good theory that comes out from sales methodology over the years. And I think from a standpoint of challenger, it's not challenger versus hunter. When I read the article, I thought about how it interlaces with, you can just call it consultative selling, and doing strong consultative selling, and then marrying the fact that being a salesperson or in a sales role is not a solo venture, that you really have to engage the rest of your organization in order to be successful. And so first I'll say that we think about at Steno, not the sales org, we think about our go-to-market organization. And that go-to-market organization consists of sales, it consists of revenue operations, and it consists of marketing. So the three VPs of each of those spokes on the wheel, we meet very regularly, and we align all of our strategies together and work really diligently around material, around output, and around the numbers to back that up so that we can keep getting better. As far as challenger sale, for me, the biggest thing, and I'm a pretty simple person, and I before I got into sales, I was a teacher and spent a long time in the classroom trying to convince teenagers to actually listen to me about things. So I had to boil things down as simply as possible. And challenger sale comes down to 3 T's. And the 3 T's are teach, tailor, and then take control. And when I read the hunters, that's where kind of part of it resonated for me. And the most important part of those 3 to me is the tailor. And where you start talking about knowing your audience and knowing who you're talking to be able to give them the right materials or use the right marketing support, is the more you know in the process of getting to know who your client is or who your prospect is, you're able to tailor a message that resonates for them around your product or your product set that will most work for them. And from there, you can teach them, not ask them questions, but actually be the subject matter expert to teach them what they need to know about why your product or why your offering is better than anybody else's in the market. And if you're doing those 2 things really, really well, the third piece of taking control should take care of itself, because they will see the need, and that kind of hits your need. And where challenger really digs back to is the traditional I'm an old person. So I grew up with spin selling. If you don't know what spin is, by Neil Rackham, spin's an acronym: situation, pain, or problem, implication, and that need. And back in the day, we were taught, and I taught sellers to ask the stupid question of what keeps you up at night. It seemed really good in 1995 that you would ask that question. Not a great question in 2025. Now you actually have to know about your client. There's a real reason to know and not ask silly questions and get right to the meat of to the heart of the matter. But it's still that same idea of understanding their situation, uncovering what their pain is, understanding the implication of they can solve their pain, and then it solves that need for them. All of those things are underpinning all of these kind of philosophies. And as I read your article, it really underpins that as well. So that's what kind of touched me.
What do you think? So what do you think the number one mistake that salespeople make? And I want to talk about B2B tech in general because that's what RPC Strategies focuses on. But obviously, since I've been in law for 31 years, like legal tech has been where I have been for the last 21 years. And, that's where you are too. I mean, having been a paralegal and having friends in law firm, like I hear plenty of things. I can answer the question myself. What are some of the biggest mistakes that sales reps are making trying to get in front of buyers in law firms?
Wow, that's a loaded question. Sometimes it depends on the buyer, and while there's lots of mistakes, I think the biggest thing is not having the persistence and the tenacity, and the true belief that what you're selling is remarkably better than anything else. Our CEO, Greg Hung, tells a story of a previous business that he started, and one of his mentors turned to him and said, basically, in a nutshell, you believe this to 99%. You don't believe that last 1% to really be able to push through, and that people can see that. And I really believe that if you do not feel in your heart of hearts that what you are doing and what you're offering is really business altering or helping that person on the other side, that will shine through. And you'll still win, you'll make some sales, but you will not be that number one producer because you just don't believe it in your heart to that fullest extent. So, I mean, I don't know if that's a mistake. That might be a signal to say maybe I should be looking to be selling something else.
I agree with you, and I don't know that I would qualify it as a mistake or not. I think it could be if you're taking a job just to have a job, just to have a paycheck or other reasons, like, and it's okay if someone isn't built that way. Maybe that's just not the right career path for you then.
Right.
But when I'm looking at prospects with RPC strategies, and it might be shooting myself in the foot sometimes, but and quite frankly, my team of consultants, they're kind of the same way. They've asked me to walk away from prospects before, but if I don't want to sell for somebody else, I enjoy, doing what we're doing now, but I always look at a prospect and I think to myself, could I be passionate about selling this product? Again, having been a paralegal, and it's been 20 years since I was a paralegal, but things in law firms are still very similar even when I was there. It's just we have technology. The process is the same, the law is the same. And so I still look at a prospect for RPC. Could I get excited about selling this? Do I see where and how a difference that this would make? And do I get excited about that? 100%. And I'm not even selling for the prospect who hopefully will turn into a client. But that's how, and from a marketing point of view too, because, and that's kind of a good transition too, to kind of continue to talk about aligning marketing and sales, is that I'm not approaching it from selling for my clients, but I am approaching it from a marketing point of view, because marketing's sole purpose for existing is supporting sales.
Yeah, I hope so. I don't know that supporting sales or supporting each other. Like, I think sometimes if you put marketing and say they're supporting sales, it's almost a subservient role that says sales is more important than marketing. And I think that's unfair. I do think that it is a hand in glove situation, and they both really need each other. If sales doesn't have marketing, then there won't be sales. And certainly marketing needs sales to be able to justify their outcomes, right? So I think maybe that's the difference. I really think that, that then gets into the conversation about, again, success for a seller also means a multi-threaded approach. Like, you will not be successful if your only motion is to make 100 dials a day, right? That might have worked in the 90s, doesn't work today. Also, if you're only relying on email, it's not going to work. You have to be multi-threaded in your approach. You have to be going to events and conferences and doing that. My outside sales team has a very specific motion when we bring in new sellers, that yes, you're going to email with very important information that comes from marketing. You're going to make a phone call and try to get in front of someone, but knowing the way law firms work, that's probably not going to be very successful. But you've done those things, but now you're going to walk into a firm and you're going to have a reason to walk into that firm, and you can reference that you did those things, but you need 5 or 10 minutes with someone so that you can show them that when you do a deposition with Steno, it's remarkably different from a business process standpoint and an outcome process for your firm, and have that belief. And then they'll listen to you for 5 or 10 minutes in person, and you can go from there.
So let's kind of talk about that. We have a couple questions that we kind of prepared to guide us. Let's talk about just generally from a high level, the prospecting and sales process. And from your point of view, all the roles you've had, the leadership roles that you've had, let's talk about those steps from prospecting to sales discovery to closing the deal and client success. And where does marketing fit in to support each one of those steps? So marketing talks about a funnel. Let's talk about the sales process. So prospecting, let's start there first. What are the kind of marketing tools or content, or what are the things that marketing do to help support the prospecting part of this phase? Let's start there.
Yeah, so actually I'll start pre-marketing with RevOps, which actually is tied into marketing and the things that come from marketing, right? So we give each of our new sellers, they have goals on a weekly basis to meet a number of firms, and we do not ask them to do that cold. So we're doing the research before them and handing them leads based on ICP and different kind of protocols and types of firms, and giving them, they have a bank of information from marketing to go to reach out. They'll do their own research on the firm. They'll get to know, obviously use LinkedIn and other tools to get to know the players at the firm that they want to target, and what type of law they're practicing. And then we have a knowledge bank of materials that's AI enabled that they can go to and grab from to be able to use for both material that's going out via email, or if they want to pursue them through LinkedIn by sending them material that way, and then obviously using on the phone. But then when they do show up for that phone call, or they do show up to that meeting, then they also have a host of tools that marketing gives them. None of them is print any longer. I mean, obviously you can print on demand, but to walk in with a folder is not what you're doing. But really, it's a combination of educational materials, thought leadership materials, small videos and snippets that marketing has built to put together to show off the different sides of the product and when it's used in different parts of the deposition, all to form that kind of story that helps bridge the storytelling that a seller uses with good material to back that up.
I agree. The way that we were taught to do sales 20 years ago was dialing for dollars, whether you're selling to consumers or businesses. And that's just, nobody likes that. But at this point, with the kind of tools and technology and knowledge that we have available to us, there's absolutely no reason why anything should, even the first outreach doesn't have to be cold anymore. You
100%. And I will also say, when I talk about outside sales and I want people at firms, we also recognize that there are plenty of firms that have work at home policies and flex time and all of those different things that 60% of the time there might not be people in the office, which makes tools like this even better. Like, I will tell you, nothing demonstrates a remote deposition better than putting somebody into a remote deposition and demoing it for them as if they're in a deposition, and being able to see the difference in how Steno does it versus how somebody else does it. It's a pretty cool use of being either in person, or I still call this in person. Like, we're interacting, I see you, and we're able to play off of each other, which makes it, for me, in person.
I agree. I've seen demos of Steno and other tools too. And again, like, I haven't been a paralegal in 20 years, but putting me in that room, even when someone is talking to us about hiring RPC strategies for marketing, we want to see a demo, but being in the middle of that and having my name and being able to, see the different rooms and the technology, it's mind blowing, and it absolutely makes a difference. Okay. So we talked about prospecting, and that, I think, kind of just generally we can say prospecting does not have to be cold anymore. There are all kinds of ways to make sure it's warm, and marketing does a lot to support that and help.
Huge part of it. Yes.
Okay. So let's talk about setting up discovery meetings and getting prepared for those discovery meetings. And I really appreciate that you brought up how we're a remote world now, because you're right. You can't just pick up a bunch of donuts. I used to do this, pick 15 dozens of donuts and go just drop them off at different law firms. And it's not that people aren't in the office, it's just, but the people you want may not be there because of the work from home, way that we do business now. So let's talk about getting ready for sales discovery meetings. How do you generally you advise preparing for sales discovery meetings? And we talked about features, benefits, the client story, and how does marketing support that?
So marketing mostly supports that in persona development, to be honest with you. So the identification of who we're going into a firm, like if we're going to talk to a litigation paralegal, we know exactly what are the things around the deposition process, from booking to getting the transcript to thinking about a summary to all the things that they have to do to support their attorneys. We know who they are. We know their stresses. And so we have personas that marketing has built out that enables the sellers to go with, here's what I already know. I'm going to ask the right questions based on what I know. I could probably not ask the questions. Some of them I won't ask, some of them I will tell in that kind of teaching style, but that I can really hone in on exactly the right message that I want to deliver, because we are a service-led business that has an amazing product. So I want to be able to lead from both sides of that. I don't only want to be product-led sales, I also want to be service-led sales. And depending on who that customer is or what that profile is, it really helps the seller decide which way to go. I think that's the most meaningful way, besides the tools and the things that we talked about, the deliverables that marketing gives us, is that build out of who those people are.
Yeah, because the paralegal has a different role than the attorney does. They're assigned to the same client, same case, but they have different roles and different purposes. And they both, I've done it, like they both need the deposition. We need the deposition taken. We need the transcript. There's things that we're doing before, during, and after that deposition takes place. But each one of us as a paralegal and then the attorney that I'm supporting, we have different purposes. And so you have to understand how that whole litigation lifecycle works and what those roles are and what the purposes are. Because Steno, let's talk about it. I know what you guys can do. You absolutely can meet the needs of everybody along the way. But you're right. When you're the salesperson going in, depending on who you have to understand who you're meeting with and what their role is and how they support one another and the client through the process.
Yeah, and I would say in a very real world scenario right now in legal tech is AI, right? You can't be in a conversation about legal technology without AI. It used to be like you couldn't sit at a poker table without somebody talking about Bitcoin, and then you would like freeze them out. I don't want to hear about it. AI now is that same kind of talk around legal technology. For us, we have an AI tool that ties to the transcript. And if you're not positioning that correctly with who you're speaking to, someone could hear that and go, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job because they don't need me to summarize this transcript, when it's the complete opposite. You're going to be able to do your job more efficiently because you know the transcript, you know the prompts to ask it to be able to pull the information from it, that you're going to be more successful and you're going to be able to expedite the work that you're doing so that you can go back to other billable work that the firm needs you on as well. Whereas if you don't position that right, someone will go, oh, that looks really cool, I'm going to lose my job. And so many people are afraid of that when it comes to AI. And if you're not aware of that as a salesperson, you'll lose some people from even listening to the story.
That's an excellent point to bring up. And talking about the billable hour, the billable hour has been challenged for 2 decades at least, right? I do believe the conversation that AI is that function that has finally put the billable hour in its place. But I've been a part of billing for time and, getting it written down, or I've seen the manipulation. I've had my time stolen before by a lawyer and who just didn't show up to work. Like that billable hour. And a couple years ago when some clients were coming in and, we're doing their ICPs and thinking about content strategy, and it's like, and you hear some of the messages out there, like, you can't go in there and say, oh, I'm going to save you so much time with this AI tool. That is the last thing that lawyers want to hear, is that you're going to save them time, because they're thinking, what do you mean you're going to save me time? Like, that's how I earn my money. That's how I get paid.
Right.
And you have to understand that.
Yeah. So I think it depends on the firm and the type of firm. But to give you an example, in large law on the defense side, right? To your point about billable time, legal operations has done an amazing job across corporate entities to go and negotiate and come up with alternate fee arrangements and all those things that have changed the law firm. But they are still, law firms A, B, and C are still fighting each other to get the business from name your corporate entity. And what we know is what was maybe 45 outside counsel for one of these big Fortune 100 companies has been cut down to 27. So how do you show yourself off as a different kind of firm? And you should be able to bring in the technologies that you're using to show that you're bringing more value, that we can do more with less, maybe in from a cost standpoint, but really that allows us to do so much more work for you. So you could give us more matters because we have more time. So in the end of the day, it should work out for both sides of that equation.
Yeah, and part of the story for the law firm too, and this isn't necessarily up to the salesperson to tell a law firm how to run its business, but if you're going to demonstrate legal tech and AI and how effective and efficient these tools are, it still needs obvious human oversight. Yes, it's going to make you more efficient. It's going to save time. But if there's an opportunity to complete the story for the client, that here's what you could do with that time saving. I mean, as a paralegal, when I was training 20 years ago, and I've got a story out there where I was like, oh my God, what do you mean there's a CD in the back of this? Like, let me tell you how much time that would have saved. But here's why that's important, because I was losing time, it was getting written down, or, but then it could have carved out time for me to do other things that we can bill for, or it creates more time for lawyers to do business development. So, I mean, again, it's not really up to us to tell a law firm how to run its business, but that is actually part of the story of what we're selling in legal tech.
Yeah, and if you have that relationship, I think when you become that trusted advisor to that attorney or whoever that is at the firm, that they can ask you. I'll give you a quick example. I'll leave names out of it. Big firm had a friend of mine who's a partner at a firm said, I want to check out your AI tool with transcripts. I have 2 expert witnesses I'm thinking about using for a case, and I don't know which one to use. And I said, well, what would you do? And he said, I would put together 4 or 5 associates and we'd pass around a bunch of transcripts and they would summarize them. And we would look for consistencies and inconsistencies across those people to see what we want related to this case. And I said, cool. Let's use our tool that we call Transcript Genius. Let's upload those same depositions into the tool. Let it summarize it for you. And then you ask those same questions you would ask in that room, put it into the LLM that we were able to do and create prompts for it. And literally I sat in a Zoom like this, and 45 minutes later, they had their expert witness. And he was able to go back to his client and say, here's how I'm using, and here's the technology that we use to figure that out. And I will not be billing you for 40 hours. So for him, it was really important to say, I want to show the client where I'm saving them time and money and creating more value so that they will give me more cases. And it all depends on who you work with.
For sure. All right. So let's talk about the deal closing part of the process. So how does marketing support that part of the process? So you've done the prospecting, you've done the sales discovery meetings, you know who the ICPs are, you did the research, you framed your discovery meetings based on that ICP, their story, their function, that part of the litigation life cycle, how the tech can really help them. You've got them to the finish line. What do you do to help get them over the finish line?
So one of the nice things about our business is we are not a subscription model. We don't have long contracts, so I don't have to pull a lot of that. At worst, we create a service level agreement that marketing has created and built out that lives inside RevOps that we pull. They also help make rate cards look nice. So generally, we'll have to go to a custom rate card. So we'll work with pricing and marketing to build those, to customize them so we can deliver them in a format that looks really strong. But then marketing also helps for us once we know we have a deal and we have verbal agreement. We have a full customer success department that we turn things over to. So every client gets a dedicated account manager. Marketing has a huge role in the materials that those folks get in the handoff process. So they get a formal email that comes from the AE that was built by marketing, lives in HubSpot, directly can go from one stage to the other. They get a packet of material that shows how to work with the account manager, how to do different things, when to book a deposition, how to use our firm dashboard. All of those materials are created from marketing to create that seamless handoff between sales and customer success.
I was going to ask that next about the client success. Once you've got the handoff, like what are the things that marketing and sales do together to just stay in touch, with the client, keep, thank you, nurturing, more opportunities, referrals. Talk about that.
Yeah. So one, my sales and customer success departments are also tied together, that all the AEs have dedicated account managers and they have monthly meetings on their top level clients and are always talking back and forth about how to collaborate and work together. If you know anything about depositions, you could be booking a high-end salesperson could have upwards of 300-400 depositions a month, which means 10 or so a day. A lot of times they cancel, they get changed, they have different needs. So you really have to be in tune with your account management team to manage through that process. Marketing is also a part of a lot of those larger level conversations, especially for our larger clients, to talk about strategies to go to different firm locations, to tell the stories, to get visuals, to get quotes from folks that we can use to bridge the gap from one firm location to another firm location. So our marketing team, specifically a product marketing group, is very intimately involved in all of those kinds of deals and stays in touch. We do a bi-weekly product marketing meeting that's led by product marketing. That is just a go-to-market motion and has product also in it to support it when we get new things being released on the product.
Excellent, excellent. So let's we've talked about how marketing and sales align throughout the prospecting to the handoff to client success. We've talked about those things. What are and we probably should have asked this earlier, what are some of the buying signals that your team sees when they know it's time to engage? So we've laid the foundation. We know how marketing can support us. So let's back it up. Now that we know that everything we need is there to support us through that process, what are the key signals that salespeople need to see that says, okay, it's time to move forward with this persona, this person?
So in our world, I will be honest, it's very difficult because the deposition space, as you know, is a lagging sale, not a leading sale. Like there is no ability, as we ended the first half of the year, and invariably, if you work for big companies or you work for companies that sell subscription types of things, they'll send out an email that says, if you add 10 licenses, we'll give you your next 5 for free, and you don't have to worry about it as long as you add them by the end of the year, whatever. That's not the way depositions work. We have to follow the discovery process. We have to wait for things to move through the courts to the attorney or the paralegal finally knows that they are ready to start booking depositions. And a lot of that time, more than 50%, is within 48 hours. So from that standpoint, there's not much we can do to influence that process. What we can do is influence, and marketing is really helpful in how we are demonstrably better in that 48-hour window that you're going to get your job booked. So we have specific SLAs that if you send in something to us for a job, which is how we make the sale, we guarantee 1 hour turnaround time, and we have an SLA that shows that we actually average 12 minutes. And marketing is all over that, especially in LinkedIn when it comes to NPS scores and all of those things. That is a huge win for us, that we can be reactive and proactive and be highly reliable for when the sale is ready to happen. So it's a little different than what a traditional sale would be, but it's that reliability and kind of what we call hospitality mindset that wins out, that marketing is really involved.
When I was in sales 20 years ago, selling court reporting, I used to look up the cases through PACER, the federal court system.
Sure.
And I was in Alabama, so Alabama state court system, they had everything online too. But I knew how to read a case action summary sheet, having been the paralegal. So that was an added piece, and not everybody has access to that or may understand how to read that case action summary sheet. But that was an added piece that I could go in and I could see all the cases they had that were open, and I could see where they were in the discovery process. And I understood from filing the complaint, the answers, motions to dismiss, then interrogatories, RFPs, whatever. Like I understood that process and like where depositions would show up. So about the time that interrogatories and request for reduction were filed, that was the point where I would try to get the meetings, and I would print these off and I would take them, and I wouldn't go through everything, but I would highlight, well, I see that you've got 3 or 4 cases, and that's it. They just want to see that you did the work, that you learned about them, that you bothered to take the time to learn about them, and asking those kinds of questions with their own information. I had an attorney years ago that I was trying to win his business back. We'd lost all the business to an entrenched competitor, but I was able to win probably 75% of it back over 6 to 12 months. But one of the attorneys was kind of a holdout. And so when I got an opportunity to meet with him, he gave me 20 minutes. And so I went into his office, I took my watch off, and I sat it down on his desk, and I said, well, you've given me 20 minutes. So I've done this research. Here's what I understand about you, your cases. And about 15 minutes, I said, well, we've got 5 more minutes to go. What questions do you have for me? And he said, no, keep going. And so we ended up talking for an hour, and he gave me the business. A couple weeks later, he takes me to lunch and he said, do you know why I chose to do business with you instead of your competitor? And I was like, well, because we have this great technology, and I showed you how much time it was going to save and how efficient and how great it was, right? All this magic about the technology. And he said, well, the technology is pretty cool, and yes, all those things are true, but that's not the reason I chose you over the competitor. I chose you over your competitor because when you walked into my office, you knew more about me than I knew about myself.
Yeah, you just took it right back to almost the challenger piece. And what I would say is, yeah, so we track cases. I think it's huge, certainly in large law. What I would tell salespeople to be successful is you cannot, in our space, you cannot spend your life chasing that because it'll take way too long. Like there's so many depositions going on a daily basis on, say, the personal injury or negligence front, that you can build a really solid book of business at that level that will then allow you to step up and do what you might call more kind of whale hunting, which is those larger cases. But certainly case tracking is huge. Marketing is part of our team with RevOps that are helping produce the case tracking. And we've done some very unique things as a court reporting agency to align sellers across multiple locations of a firm, be able to pitch a unified story. So, if defense firm A is in Chicago and defense firm B is in Boston and they're both on the same case, we make sure they're getting one alignment on pricing from the beginning and not getting separate from different salespeople. That doesn't make sense. So I think that's how we probably use case tracking for us, is so that we can align sellers well in advance so that we can be one unified organization instead of looking like 5 or 6 different companies.
Right. And I should clarify this too, based on, your answer, is that it really this is for all legal tech, right? So obviously Gil's with a court reporting firm, and that's litigation. But whatever your legal tech is, it's, what is the practice area? What are their needs? What are those additional tools that you have available to you to do research on them and their clients, their practices, like where they are in the process, and just leveraging that research, even just 2 or 3 things to enhance your story. And because just 2 or 3 things articulated in the right way lets them know that it's all about them. And that's what they want to hear, that it's all about them. Then they'll talk to you and they'll open up to you.
I agree. I think in legal tech in general, if you can go in and talk to an attorney about the cases they're participating in or the cases they've won or the pro bono work they do, like there's a reason why all that information is on their website about each one of those. They need it to get more business for to create their own bona fides, but also they like to talk about who they are. So if you can come in and talk about those things and it resonates with them, it's 100% a great thing to do. The other thing to do in legal tech, is pay attention to the space about consolidation or mergers or laterals. When you can walk into a managing partner and say, hey, I saw you brought on a lateral group of 13 people from so-and-so. How are you integrating them into X system that is part of what you've already sold to them? That's a signal that they need more licenses, more seats, more of whatever, and you're aware of it instead of having them come to you and say, hey, all of a sudden I realize that my person doesn't have this. I need to get them this. You're proactive because you know what's happening.
So in wrapping this up, Gil, you have had an amazing journey. You have worked with legal tech startups, legal tech scale-ups, and you have worked with very large established companies. So throughout your career, what is your best advice that you can give to the things that you've seen that work between aligning marketing, sales, and client success to make both the legal tech and their clients successful?
I think the biggest thing that I've learned is to stay humble in my own role and know that I don't know everything and that I need everybody around me more than they probably need me. And being able to come to people with true partnerships across the organization. And we've been talking certainly about marketing and a little bit about RevOps because those work jointly. But in the world that also includes product and development and people operations, all of those things make up who you are successfully. So at the end of the day, a lot of organizations will point to a number and say that the sales organization was successful because it hit X. We do a really good job of saying we are successful because the company has done X, Y, and Z, and we're just a part of that. The more that you can stay grounded in yourself with humility and grace, the more successful you will be in building partnerships across the org. Now, some of my sellers will see this probably and laugh and say Gil likes to scream and those kinds of things, and that's fine too. But in general, I try to remind myself at my advanced age, who at 27 as a new sales manager once threw a chair across a room as I was angry at a seller. I've learned a lot about how to be a better partner across an organization, and that leads to personal life and professional life in any part. But that's hugely important in sales, but also in my world of sales leadership and building more and more sales leaders under me. I think it's really important.
And a final free-for-all question. Anything that we haven't talked about or addressed that you want to and you think is an important addition to this conversation?
I have no idea what I've said over the last hour, so I don't know. No, I'm just kidding. No, I feel that this was great. Again, I appreciate all that you do, not just obviously in your role and what you're doing to help promote legal technology across the board and bringing marketing and sales together. I think it's really cool to see a marketing strategist, for lack of a better term, really understand that it is also not a marketing solo thing, that the sales side of it is really, really important. And the more and more organizations can see those two things aligned, the better organizations will be in how they present themselves to their clients.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, everybody, that wraps up this episode with Gil Wolchock and talking about hunters and challenger and how marketing and sales and client success should be working together. So this first episode of the 6-month series in sales. Gil, thank you so much for joining me today in this conversation. And we look forward to seeing y'all at the next episode.
Thank you. Appreciate it.